Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I'm your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I always appreciate everybody who listens to my podcast. And of course, thank you to Bold Brave Television Network for having me. So I am embarking on several episodes devoted to hypnotherapy and healing through our beautiful minds. Now, I love to talk about all of this. However, last week I had a very difficult time organizing my thoughts and being creative. In fact, I didn't realize it immediately, but I was way off. My energy was way off. My flow was non-existent. I was kind of falling apart, actually, not just kind of, I was falling apart. So I decided to email our wonderful engineer, Caleb, here at Bold Brave Television and just ask him to do a rerun because I was stuck. I was disorganized, I was exhausted, I was chaotic. So although I really do want to talk about hypnotherapy, and I will, I think today instead I'm going to talk about this state that I was in last week, how I got there, how I worked my way through it, how I came to be here today, once again in a calm mind and calm body, because trust me, I was not that way last week. All right, so I really think that it's important to share these personal experiences. I'm kind of an open book on this podcast, and I always think if I'm feeling this way, then there must be others out there feeling the same way and having these moments too. So I always hope to inspire healing through sharing my own personal experiences and stories, and also sharing the stories of other people, their own personal experiences, and inspiring people to do that healing. It feels good to know that you're not alone in your experiences. It feels good to know that it's possible to pull yourself out of difficult moments. It feels good to hear that all of this is a normal part of our progressive growth. And it's good to hear how other people have turned it around. And, most importantly, it's important to encourage and inspire people to take care of themselves, to do their own personal healing. And, I wasn't taking care of myself last week. I wasn't doing that. So let's talk about this. What happened? All right, so I'm calling this episode of Talks with Tracy, Tracy's momentary relapse into old thoughts and behaviors, because that's exactly what happened. I relapsed into thoughts and old patterns of behavior that I had hoped were a thing of my past, but they just crept right back up on me. Now, eventually I did intervene and work my way through this, but I'll talk about that later on in the show. So what happened? Well, it's summertime. It's summertime, and this is an extremely busy time of year for my family and for me, and I'm sure it's an extremely busy time for you as well. It's like 100 degrees out across the country, right? Montana is no different. It's been so hot here. My kids are hot. I'm hot. Everybody wants to cool off and go swimming, and schedules are off because there's no school, and bedtimes are wacky, and there's just a lot of stressors that come with summer for people, myself included, and people who have children, people who don't have children. Have additional stressors or different stressors during the summertime. So um, my family's busy period actually started back at the end of May. We had my daughter's state rodeo finals, which were in a different state. They were in Idaho. We were gone for a week with that, and that kind of began began this super busy period of time. Now, please don't get me wrong. All of these things that I'm going to mention, they're really fun things. They're great things. I'm so thankful for the opportunity and the resources to do all of these incredible things. I really am. So please don't take this as me complaining. I'm just trying to lay the groundwork for my meltdown, for my emotional relapse. All right, so like I said, we started at the end of May. We rodeoed, then we started summer softball, which all of you softball parents know that softball is like an every weekend thing with tournaments and practices all during the week. So, these tournaments started at the end of May, right before that state rodeo, and they continued on until just a couple weeks ago with the state finals. And somehow, in the midst of all that, we managed to like squeeze in a vacation with my mom, which was lovely, and I appreciated. And then we came back from that vacation, and we went straight into softball again. So we got home to our house after that vacation, and 2 hours later, we were in Missoula, which is an hour away, at a softball tournament. So everything was happening very fast. And then 4th of July came, which is a beautiful holiday. Here I live on the Flathead Reservation, and we have the first of our big powwows in Arlene, Montana around the 4th of July. So this is a beautiful event. I love it. We go and we camp down there at the powwow. My kids dance. I love watching them. It's a busy time because, I'm like making moccasins and getting their dance regalia ready and all of that. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to paint a picture of what was happening in my life. Um, so on top of that, along with the powwow, during that powwow, my kids were in a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and my one daughter was playing in a softball tournament an hour away from the powwow. So we were running between all of these events. Now, you may be thinking, oh my God, Tracy, set some limits, have some boundaries. So I get that. You may be thinking your kids don't have to participate in everything. Well, I appreciate that. That's a valid point. You know, um, that's a really valid point. And in retrospect, I also think that. But at the time, it didn't occur to me that this was just an unreasonable amount of things to do, because this is how I've always been in the past. I've always done this, and I was in it. I was going, going, going. Of course, another busy part of this time was my work. My work hours hadn't changed. I was still working 40 plus hours a week, um, on top of all of these events and activities. Now, I also recognize that I am my own boss. I have my own business, so I can set my own schedule. But let me tell you, I am the most demanding boss I have ever worked for. So I have trouble, setting limits, giving myself breaks. Another thing that I can work on. All right, so here I was relapsing into old thoughts and patterns of behavior. In Talks with Tracy, episodes 1 and 2, I talk about these. I was painfully bashful, full of anxiety in my childhood. I was highly invested in hiding myself, not being noticed, and I really had no awareness of the beliefs and emotions that were driving me back then. But I know now that, or I do have that awareness now, and I do know that this was actually a strategy to remain hidden, unnoticed, never wanting to disappoint people. I was a major people pleaser, and I was always trying to meet the expectations of others. Um, I would lay low and I would please everybody. That was my strategy. So these beliefs and behaviors, of course, they followed me into adulthood. And you can't heal a problem if you don't have awareness that there is a problem. If you don't know there's a problem, you're not going to work on healing it. And I just saw this as who I was and how I was. It was normal to feel and act this way for me then. I really didn't even think about it. I just did it. So in my adulthood, these beliefs and behaviors, they caused me great suffering. And in my effort to remain unnoticed and stay hidden, I became this unspoken and unrecognized supporter of everyone and everything. So my employers loved me. I was the brains behind the development of programs. I let them take full credit. I was just a little workhorse, working long hours, committed both in my work life, my career, and my personal life. So, I worked to my breaking point and beyond for, my career and my family. I made a household that really looked successful and functional and happy. And all the while, I was just killing myself to get there, doing, going, completely focusing on meeting the expectations of others and completely focusing on making others happy. And, I really paid absolutely no attention to my own needs. I didn't listen to my body, what my body was telling me. I was sacrificing myself for the sake of others and putting myself last and on and on. But I had worked on all of that, right? I had healed from all of that. Well, here in my present day life, I was relapsing into these old thoughts and behaviors. So do, more, try harder. I really just found myself doing too much, creating chaos and disorganization in my brain, which then led to chaos and disorganization in my environment, which then led to more chaos and disorganization in my brain. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, I was on the struggle bus last week. So I had truly fallen into these old beliefs and behaviors of my past. I had once again became that behind the scenes Tracy, like killing myself to make everyone else happy and to do everything to create beautiful experiences for everybody else. I was just trying to live up to these imaginary expectations. Now, who was placing all these expectations on me? It wasn't my husband. I think he could see a meltdown on the horizon. He was like, hey, slow down. Everything's okay. Take a break, relax. My children, of course, they put unreasonable expectations on me. They're my children. But I'm the adult. I'm the one in charge, right? I'm the one saying what we can and can't do. So I can't blame them. They're kids. They get a free pass for unreasonable expectations on me. So who was placing these expectations on me? Apparently, it is this little asshole that lives in my head, who can still wreak havoc on my mind during periods of high stress, moving me in the direction of these old thoughts and behaviors. Okay, I think of that movie, Inside Out. I've talked about that movie before. And I think what this little asshole in my head would look like if it was in character form, right? So I feel like it would look like this little diabolical character, like sitting back and just waiting in this like conniving way, waiting for that moment of vulnerability to wreak havoc on my mind and throw me back into these old thoughts and behaviors of my past, right? Just sitting there waiting. Oh my goodness. So it's not a pretty thing. It's not a pretty character. And again, here I thought I was healed from these things, and that this wouldn't happen to me again. And here it was happening. So I really want to stress that this happens to all of us, even those of us who have done a considerable amount of healing and have a considerable amount of awareness. When we get to these places of high stress and high vulnerability, our nervous systems, they just get lit on fire. And what happens? What happens when you try to do too much? Oh my goodness. You get overwhelmed. Frustration builds. Everything, one thing on top of the other happens and happens. And your brain, it just gets disorganized. And your nervous system, it just is set on fire. So yes, your nervous system, it gets set on fire, it gets triggered, It gets triggered by every demand happening in your life once you're in this state of stress and overwhelm. So now we don't usually think of our nervous system as being activated by daily stressors because, we kind of think of our nervous system more as something that's overwhelmed and activated, put into fight, flight, or freeze when we're experiencing some huge traumatic experience. But we really don't put enough attention to the fact that our nervous system is actually um, triggered by a million little hits all throughout our day. Now, it's also triggered by, you know, past experiences and that are related to trauma and whatnot. But we don't really acknowledge the impact that all those million little hits have on our nervous systems. All right, so yes, all of this, all of this is set on fire and activated on our fight, flight, or freeze. So my nervous system was set on fire by all the demands happening in my life, and I got to that state of overwhelm. All right, so it's time to take a brief commercial break. When we return, I am going to share exactly what my breaking point looked like and what I did to pull myself out and put myself back on track. So please join me for that. You're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television. We will be right back. Oh, it looks like our engineer is not right back. So let me talk a little more until he's back. He did send me a message. Oh, he's back. All right, we are going to break for a commercial. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. So I am talking today about a recent series of events that caused me some big challenges that I experienced, and it caused me to fall back into old thoughts and behaviors that are not good for me, that do not serve me, and that, quite honestly, I had hoped that I had healed and wouldn't experience anymore. So now in the last segment, I described how all these incredibly busy life events of the summer came to overwhelm me and bring me to a point of in which my brain was chaotic and disorganized, which caused my physical environment to become chaotic and disorganized, which then caused my brain to become even more chaotic and disorganized. And this really, it just zapped the life right out of me. It really threw me off. Um, it, uh, it just is this place where my nervous system was really on fire, and it really had a huge impact on me. And now, again, typically when we think of our nervous systems being on fire or activated, we think of trauma experiences. We think of things that cause lifelong trauma symptoms. We think of physical assaults. We think of childhood abuse. We think of car accidents. We think of domestic violence. Those kind of things where, your life is in danger. You have a fear of death and dying. Of course, those create trauma symptoms and activate our nervous system like crazy, putting us in fight, flight, freeze. But, we really don't give ourselves enough credit for how the everyday attacks on our nervous system impact us and put us into even a fight, flight, freeze mode. This can be activated by daily stressors, and it is, because those daily stressors, once they build up and you get overwhelmed, they feel like assaults on our nervous systems. So this is a pretty normal thing that people experience, but often don't give ourselves credit for, or don't recognize just how impactful it is on our mental and physical health and well-being. So this is what was happening in my mind and body last week. My nervous system was on fire and being repeatedly triggered by what would be considered kind of normal everyday things. But all of these things, when they came at me so fast, everything felt like an assault on my nervous system. For example, I willingly took on 4 puppies. We got 4 new puppies. All right, I'm trying to potty train these puppies. It's not going very well. So I'm cleaning up a lot of messes, poop and pee messes, right? So this is a pretty normal thing that shouldn't overwhelm my nervous system. Okay. But when I am overwhelmed and I am disorganized, I'm feeling chaotic, it is something that triggers my nervous system and sets me on fire internally. Even something like that. Now, this along with thoughts that I was having, like, I have to get to work. I have to see these clients. I have to find time to write for my podcast. I have to make these moccasins. I have to get this regalia ready. I have to pick up my daughter. In the midst of all of this, my 14-year-old came down with strep throat. So then I was like, I have to get the medicine. I have to make sure she's comfortable. Is she okay? I have to check on her. I have to be there for you. And all the while, it's 100 degrees out. My kids, they want to cool off. They're hot and crabby. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the heat as well. And then once again, my dog just crapped on the floor again. All of this, my house is a mess. I have to write a show. I have to write a show. I have to be creative. All of this whirlwind was going on in my mind, and, it just felt super unmanageable. So what happens when you're in this state? You start to unravel. Of course, you start to unravel. I found myself completely unable to be creative due to my disorganized mind. Now, to be creative, and you have to be creative to develop content for a podcast, one really needs to be, in like a flow state of creativity. Well, let me assure you, there was nothing flowing in me last week. So, I started to make things even worse for myself. I started putting pressure on myself to write, to be creative, which was pointless, because the more pressure I put on, the less creative I was. Then I started making really poor choices. I started dragging my computer with me every place I went. My kids were hot. They wanted to swim in the lake. So we'd go to the lake and I'd bring my computer, which doesn't even work well at the lake. But, I was like, oh, I'll do this. I'll write something really quick while my kids are swimming. Well, anybody who has children knows that's pointless. That doesn't work. Kids, they want your attention. They want you to be present. They want a sandwich. They want they want you to go get them things and whatnot. They're kids. So bringing my computer there was pointless and only caused more pressure to be on myself. So, then I did something even worse. I started bringing my computer home with me, and I was like, I will write after my kids go to sleep. All right, it's summertime. My kids go, they don't go to sleep till 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock. And then I was going to write after that. So now I created a situation where I was putting pressure on myself to be creative late at night when I'm tired. And then I'm not producing as well. So then I have these worry thoughts going on about how I still haven't written anything that then keep me awake. So what do? I decide I will wake up early in the morning and do it instead, adding even more sleep deprivation to my plate. These are all very poor choices I was making. Things were going from bad to worse. So now my breaking point came one morning after I'd gotten up early to try to prepare for my show, which was unproductive. My creativity was blocked. My emotional state was not good. I was exhausted. Nothing was coming. My sister Hiccups, she called because she was going to pick up my daughter. They were going to spend the day together while I went to work. And so we agreed to a pickup point. My daughter and I, we got all ready. We headed out to the car, and I realized that I didn't know where my keys were. All right. Disorganized brain from setting unreasonable expectations on myself, not paying attention to my own needs, doing too much for the sake of others, not setting limits and having boundaries, literally working myself up into a frenzy, repeating old patterns and behaviors because I was vulnerable to slipping. All right, and then I did something that was completely ineffective as far as finding my keys. I sat down in the middle of my living room or in the middle of my kitchen. I just started crying. Now, this is not a proud parenting moment. This is not a good thing, but my beautiful daughter, she's going to be 10 this weekend. She was hugging me. She did a breathing exercise with me. She was saying things like, "Now, Mom, where's the last place you remember having your keys?" And she was calmly looking, and I called my sister and I'm like, "I can't find my keys," and I'm crying, and she goes into like first responder emergency mode, right? And she's like, "I'll be right there." I'm really lucky to have my very own 911 operators and first responders. I have my sister Hiccups, my sister Martha. My sister Martha, her words are, "What do you need me to do? How can I help?" And my sister Hiccups is like, "I'm on my way." And then my husband, he's always just like, "Everything's going to be okay." So I'm super happy to have those first responders in my life. Trust me, I need them. So my sister arrived. My daughter is like a super genius. She went out to the car and she pushed the button on my car to see if it would start. She knows the keys have to be nearby for that to happen. The car started. She knew the keys were nearby, and her and my sister located these in my car. They found them in my purse. My gosh, I had looked 4 times in my purse, but my disorganized mind could not see them. That's the state I was in. Disorganized, chaotic mind. It was like my soul was screaming out for me to stop, slow down, listen. So I did. Now, in the past, this was a state that I was frequently in. It was a state that I hid really well because it was kind of my norm. I would continue to not listen. I would push through. I would go at that same relentless pace. I would ignore all the signs um, telling me that I needed to slow down and take care of myself. And it was this that just caused me the greatest suffering and physical illness even. Now today, I know to take care of myself better. I know that I have to pay attention to my mental and physical health because I'm important too. I'm as important as anyone else. I know that. I have to be high on my own list of priorities. Like when you're on that airplane and the oxygen mask falls down and they say, apply your own oxygen mask first before tending to your children. I used to think, whatever, I'm going to be there for my children, tend to my children first, of course, but I get it. You have to take care of yourself before you can be available for others in a meaningful way. So, my personal health and well-being, it's important too. So, I do believe that I've taught my children the importance of, just taking a moment for yourself and calming yourself down. Maybe I don't always set the best example, but I do tell them that their health and well-being is important. I'm really good at taking care of other people. Um, so I just want to share this kind of funny story about my younger daughter, the one who's going to be turning 10. That is an example of things that I have taught about taking a moment to get yourself together. This was an example of her doing that. All right, so my daughter, again, we're playing softball, all these tournaments. It's super hot out. So we were doing this. We were at a softball game a few weeks ago. It was hot. Her team was losing. She is really hard on herself about her own personal performance. That's something we need to work on. She gets really mad if she's striking out. She was having some strikeouts and whatnot. So when she was upset, she just struck out and she comes around to the back part of the dugout and she sits down outside of the dugout and she puts her head down and she's crying, right? So now her dad, who is a coach, he came around the corner and he was like, "You need to get in the dugout." And she put her hand up and she said, "I need a minute." So he walked away. Now I was standing, I was kind of like on standby, emergency responder, first responder for her, waiting to see if she needed something from me. I could see she was telling what she needed. She needed a minute. Well, her dad came back around and he said, "You need to get in the dugout. There's no crying in softball." And my precious little nugget, she looked up at him and said, "I need a minute." So he walked away again. And I'm like, wow, she's standing up for herself. She's expressing her need. Great job. I'm still on standby. So I said, "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you." And again, my precious little nugget, she looks up at me and she says, "You can tell my dad to quit acting like such a little bitch." And I was like, oh, okay. I respect your expression. I can't actually do that. I was thinking more like some cold water, maybe a cold cloth for your neck, maybe a hug, something like that. And she put her hand up to me. She didn't want any of that. So I was on standby and I could see she was breathing. She was trying to get herself out of this. She was trying to calm her nervous system down. She was obviously in fight mode, right? Fight, flight, freeze. I froze when I was at my kitchen table. She was in fight mode, but she was expressing her need in her way, and she was taking care of herself. She was taking a moment to calm. So I appreciated that. I really appreciated that. Now you might be offended by my daughter's expression. Yeah, she shouldn't have called her dad a little bitch. But she was in her nervous system was on fire. I respected that and I was just available to her. Now, had I done what she did that day, had I done that for myself, taken a moment, demanded a moment and taken care of myself, you know, I could have avoided a meltdown. I could have completely avoided that situation of freezing at my kitchen table and crying. So I'm really glad she knows to take the time to when she needs it and to calm herself down. And she did, and she went out and played when they took the field. So all was good again. All right, so it's time to take another commercial break. When we return, I'll be sharing the things that I did to get myself back on track, back in balance, back in the flow. So please stay tuned for that. Do a little self-care out there. I will do the same. You're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. All right, thank you for joining me once again. I so appreciate everyone who listens to my podcasts. I've been sharing my own recent personal experience with falling into old thoughts and behaviors, patterns of behavior that are from my past. And, I honestly believe that with all the healing I've done and all the awareness that I've developed over the past several years, that, I wouldn't, all of that would have prevented me from getting to these moments. But, apparently you can slip into these traps again, because I did. And those behaviors and thoughts can repeat themselves. Now, I guess if you think in recovery terms, they always say that relapse is a part of recovery. So I am just going to offer myself grace and understanding around this experience, and accept that relapse is also a part of my own recovery from these emotional issues that I have suffered from in my lifetime and learned from and grown from in my lifetime. So, I'll give myself credit for recognizing that I'd slipped, and give myself credit for doing something to change it, to get myself back on track. So what did I do to get myself back on track? To get myself back into a flow, an energetic flow? How did I go from Tracy's a hot mess to Tracy is once again in a calm mind and a calm body? Well, I started with radical acceptance and honesty of what was happening, right? I drew my attention to my current state of mind, what was happening to me. I had to acknowledge that I was way off and I needed some kind of immediate intervention with myself to stop doing what I was doing and do something better. So that's the starting point, is being honest and being aware. Seems simple enough, right? Well, to decide to do some emergency self-care when you're falling apart, interestingly enough, in this disorganized mind state, I found myself asking permission from my closest people, from, those 911 first responders, permission to take care of myself. I found myself asking permission to make decisions based upon my own needs. Now, that's interesting. As I reflect back, what's that about? Again, slipping into old behaviors and people pleasing kind of behaviors. And, maybe this is some, residual issue about my own worthiness, that old difficulty with making myself a priority, with focusing attention on myself, fear of not meeting the expectations of others. Now that would be a great thing for me to work on in hypnotherapy. Again, I'm a work in progress. So I could go to a hypnotherapist and I could say, this is the issue that I want to work on. I want to work on this issue of needing to have permission from my loved ones to do self-care. And in hypnotherapy, my beautiful subconscious mind, it could be guided to take me right back to the very originating experiences that set that belief into motion and all of the emotion around it that created that false belief. And then I could do the healing. I could have better words, images, beliefs instilled, suggested, and instilled in my subconscious mind. That's probably something that I will do in the future as I continue to work on myself. So what I did was ask my first responders, my sister Hiccups, my sister Martha, and my husband. I asked them for permission to do some things to kind of relieve the pressure that I was feeling. So I was like, my first thought was, do you think it'd be a big deal if I did a rerun? Because I am having trouble being creative. Now, it didn't look like that. I was like, do you think it's okay to do a rerun? My sister Hiccups was like, yes, do a rerun. That wasn't enough. I still needed to go to my other first responders, right? I asked my sister Martha, and she was like, yes, do a rerun. Take care of yourself. Of course, my husband's like, yeah, babe, do a rerun. It'll all be okay. Just take care of yourself. Take a break. Anyway, so I did. I had all that permission, and I did. So I needed to remove the bigger stressors off of my to-do list temporarily, of course, in order to get myself back on track. And, this was a great start because it immediately relieved my mind. Again, what was I needing all this validation for to take care of myself? My goodness. I had fallen into those old people pleasing behaviors and old fears of disappointing others. This belief that I had to do more and more and more. I had to do better. Maybe a fear of failing. I don't know. So, using this radical honesty, I acknowledged that my mind was disorganized due to being overwhelmed and that my nervous system was on fire. My emotions were all over the board. I needed to calm down. I needed to provide myself with support. So now, some people at this point, they may choose to numb the feelings with substances. Some people may choose to avoid the feelings and distract. Some people may choose to completely deny the feelings and just keep going. That denial person, that used to be me. That used to be how I was. But I'm not the old me. I am healthier than that, and I love myself more than that. So I chose to face the issues head on, acknowledge my vulnerability, and develop a plan to deal with the feelings and the overactivated nervous system, so that I could get back on track. All right, so now the awareness that I had about what was happening, what was needed, that's true proof of the healing that I have done, that I've done over the past several years. As I said, in the past, I would have never acknowledged this, and I would have never taken time to recenter. In the past, I would have only judged myself. I would have pushed myself harder, even punished myself to the point of both mental and physical breakdown. They say we would never treat anybody else the way we treat ourselves. So I sent a quick email to our wonderful engineer, Caleb, um, here at Bold Brave Television, and I just said, hey, can you do a rerun? And it was that simple as part of taking care of myself. So I just needed to acknowledge that the pressure that I was putting on myself to get all these things done and make everyone happy, it was purely coming from myself. Nobody else was putting this pressure on me. Nobody else was setting these expectations for me. So, please don't get me wrong. I love doing this podcast each week. I am so thankful for it and I get excited about it. But when I am stuck in survival mode, when my nervous system is activated and I'm in a state of disorganization and chaos, my creativity is blocked and I'm completely unable to produce. So, I totally understand how those professional writers get writer's block when they're up against like a publishing deadline. Oh my gosh, I don't know how they do it. So, the next thing I did, I focused on self-care. Number one, I made a commitment to myself to leave my computer at my office so that I could disconnect from work and go home once I left my office, leave my work at the office. And this was extremely helpful. I decided to schedule time to write for my podcast rather than try to squeeze it in here and there. All of these are really good choices. The next thing I did, number two, I scheduled an appointment with the amazing Catherine Markaras, who is my dear friend and an energy healer. She's a Reiki master and hypnotherapist. And, I recognized that I needed to calm my nervous system in order to get back on track, recenter, recalibrate my mind and body. And again, I was just so out of whack. So my appointment with Catherine was amazing. She did this process with me called somatic experience. So first of all, she began by reminding me that we all have this mammalian physiology, that physiology that was super helpful back in caveman days. I mean, it's still very helpful for animals, for sure. Like, a gazelle who's being chased by a lion, when they go into fight, flight, freeze, and all of that survival instinct kicks in, and they're running from the lion. They're running from their life. They get away. Afterwards they just shake it off. They don't hold on to it. They're not thinking. They're not judging themselves. They're not like, wow, I should have gone this direction, or if I would have ran a little bit harder, that would have been better. I could have done better. They're not thinking any of that. It's gone. So, of course, we humans, we have the same survival reaction, only we have these advanced brains. They like to hold on to things. They like to rationalize things. We judge ourselves. We assign blame. We criticize our performance. We do all of these things. That gazelle, it doesn't do that. In fact, we may not be being chased by a lion, but we do allow our nervous system to take a million little hits all throughout our day without taking care of ourselves. Our nervous system can only take so much. When I sat down at that kitchen table and started crying, that was me being in freeze mode. Or when my daughter said, made her comment that I described to you in the last segment, she was in fight mode. So, that's where my nervous system had gotten me. So I definitely had the need to calm my nervous system. So, Catherine recognized this state of mind immediately. Well, I was almost in tears when I went to her. And we did this thing called somatic experience that involved me relaxing and focusing my attention inward. I just closed my eyes. We did some breathing to calm down. And then I went inside and I just did this visualized scan of my body, looking for places in my body that needed to be relaxed. And I did relax those areas. So once I was relaxed, my muscles, were in a relaxed state, then I just kept my eyes closed and I asked my body what it was needing. And my attention was immediately brought to my spinal column, my central nervous system, go figure. And that's where my body was screaming out that I needed attention to be placed. So I just relaxed and I allowed my mind to give my nervous system, I focused on that area, give my nervous system whatever it was needing. And what came to me was this beautiful visualization of blue sparkling energy, and it washed over my brain, and then it went down my spinal column, and it kind of whooshed out negativity. Now this process, it repeated itself over and over and over until I felt like I was done. It was a cleansing that was happening. This isn't anything I tried to think of. This is what came as I relaxed my mind and asked my body what I was needing. So I did this process several times and I felt completely relaxed as a result. And that was me tending to my overactivated nervous system and really doing some beautiful calming. So now it's time to take another brief commercial break. When we return, I'll share the other thing that I did with Catherine in that session and share some final thoughts with you. So you are watching Bold Brave Television Talks with Tracy, with me, Tracy Claremont. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like,
I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you for joining me for this final segment. I've been talking today about my momentary relapse into old thoughts and behaviors, and I've been stressing the need to take a step back and when you're feeling overwhelmed, disorganized, chaotic, and really look honestly at what's happening and do some self-care. Awareness is key to intervening, because if you don't recognize that there's a problem, then you can't fix the problem, right? So fix that problem. Have the awareness. Awareness is key. Like I said, I spent many, many years just denying there was even a problem and neglecting myself, and it really caused me great suffering in my life. Now, with this momentary relapse, I had the awareness that I needed to intervene and intervene immediately to get myself back on track, and that's what I did. So I did just want to say, with the session that I had with Catherine, we did do, after the somatic experience, we did do about 30 minutes of hypnotherapy that was focused on regaining my flow and my creativity. And when we were doing this hypnotherapy, this beautiful image of my daughters dancing at the powwow came to me, and I just saw the flow of their shawls, and I saw them being in perfect rhythm with the beat of the drum, and I could hear the songs, and that really represented a flow of creativity and a flow of life that was a really nice visualization for me. And then Catherine instilled suggestions around that flow, which was very, very helpful to me. Now, I do want to say that I don't want people listening to this to think that they have to have a friend like Catherine in their life to do any of this, or they have to have money to purchase services like this, because you really don't. All you need to do is set your intention at going inward, quiet yourself. Yeah, you do have to have a quiet place for that supports you, relaxing, closing your eyes, no interruptions, going inward. But you can do all of these visualizations yourself. You can go inward. You can focus on where the stress is that you're holding in your body, and you can ask your body what it is needing, and just relax and see what your mind brings forward to you. All of these kind of things. You can Google a guided visualization around this, and you can certainly Google some supportive hypnotherapy. Or you can have an appointment with somebody like me, a certified hypnotherapist. That would be so much fun. But you can do this. All of this is available to you. You can do this all on your own. So now, just a couple of other things that I did to regain my flow and recenter myself. I got out in nature. Nature is incredibly healing. I swam with my kids and I focused on that moment. I was present there. I went to beautiful Flathead Lake and I set my intention that every time I jumped in, I would wash off the stressors in my life and come out cleansed and fresh and new. That's something that I love to do. So I used nature to support myself, and I just took time for those joyful experiences, focusing on being in the moment. They say if you live in the past, you get depressed. If you live in the future, you get anxious. So it's really important to be in the present moment and to be experiencing joyful moments. The other thing I did is I got appropriate sleep. That's a big one too. So, all right. I started out this episode by saying, if this is something that I'm experiencing, then it's likely something you're experiencing as well. And I just really want to encourage everybody out there to do that self-care. Choose to, if you have, nobody should have to sacrifice for the sake of others. And if others are expecting you to do that, then that's not love. Choose to live with love around you. You're worthy of that. So, in closing today, I'd like to share this Facebook post or Instagram post that my dear friend Abby sent to me in the midst of all this chaos. So, it's from an Instagram person named Blooming with Emmy. And I quote, "Sorry I didn't finish my to do list. I was busy decoupling my worth from my productivity. Sorry I didn't finish my to do list. I was busy remembering I'm a part of nature, not a robot. Sorry I didn't finish my to-do list. I was busy reclaiming my human right to rest and relaxation. Sorry I didn't finish my to-do list. I was busy frolicking in nature's abundance. Sorry I didn't finish my to-do list. I was busy letting go of the relentless need to push myself harder. Sorry I didn't finish my to-do list. I was busy screaming at the sky about the pain of it all. Sorry I didn't finish my to-do list. I was busy finding the beauty and wonder in my own wild and precious life." Now, I love this post. It was so appropriate and the timing was great. Now, if I could change this post, I would do one thing. Do you know what it is? I would take off the apology. We don't have to apologize for self-care. I would say I didn't get to my to-do list because I was busy decoupling my worth from my productivity. I would take off that sorry because every single one of us deserves self-care, time to recenter, time to regroup, time to relax our nervous system and make ourselves a priority. And I totally encourage you to have the awareness and to do those things each time you find yourself falling into old thoughts and behavioral patterns. All right, so thank you so much for listening today. Next week, I'm going to have my friend and energy healer and Reiki master, Catherine Marcaras, who I got help from last week, on the show. She's going to talk about this somatic experience and hypnotherapy and how she guides healing and give us some examples of that. I'm super excited about that. So until then, this has been Talks with Tracy, with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television. I will see you next week.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.